Um, as I mentioned earlier, John, you're the executive director of the Celebration Bowl. Just curious, how does one become an executive director of the bowl? I mean, what are the qualifications?
That's a good question because I still don't know the answer to that. It wasn't really something that I was pursuing. I was chief executive for 100 Black Women of Atlanta, and we actually ran a game, the Atlanta Football Classic, that featured Florida A&M and Tennessee State.
Okay.
And when ESPN was looking to launch the bowl game in Atlanta, they reached out to me through the commissioner at that time to have a meeting with them.
Okay.
And so the conversation sort of led to an offer to join ESPN. And I initially was a little hesitant, but just simply because I was enjoying what I was doing. But I enjoy building things, and I saw this really as a great opportunity to build something institutional for historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, and to work at putting us in a space where we aren't as it relates to being with the other bowl games. And although the Celebration Bowl was sort of a legacy of the Heritage Bowl, which was a legacy of the Pelican Bowl, that it was our desire to make sure we were able to institutionalize this in a way that 50 years from now, 100 years from now, that this game would be very, very viable and would certainly be functioning at a level beyond what anyone would imagine today.
Absolutely. And so in 2015, that was the first year the Celebration Bowl was correct?
Correct.
Well, you said ESPN, so who pitched it to ESPN? Did ESPN come to somebody or someone actually pitched it to them?
Well, Dr. Dennis Thomas, who was the commissioner of the MEAC at that time, approached ESPN with the idea to get engaged with the bowl game. It wasn't called the Celebration Bowl at the time; it had no name, because the Heritage Bowl, which preceded that, had actually gone defunct. I think it was back in 1999, around that time, and so pitched the idea to ESPN, and it actually took 10 years after that for the MEAC chancellors and presidents to vote to approve giving up the automatic qualifier to go to the playoffs and actually go to the bowl game. So initially, again, it was his idea to pitch it to them, but as I tell people, there's a lot of great ideas out there that are in file cabinets and some in the trash heap, but because it takes three things to actually put something together. It takes an idea, then it takes someone to finance it, then it takes someone to build it. So it's a three-phase. So certainly applaud Dr. Thomas for the idea, and I applaud ESPN stepping up and saying, "Hey, we had to finance this," and then we were fortunate that we were able to come in with our team and actually build it, and so that's why we have what we have today.
That's awesome. The first time that I actually came to the Celebration Bowl was in 2019, and She Say Sports was just taking off, and I was working with BJ Jones and Charles Bishop. They were showing me the ropes, and I was trying to get on Radio Row. I couldn't get there. Something was going on that they stopped it or whatever, but I was amazed at how
I love my HBCU, and boy, I love it, I love it, I love my HBCU, and man, I hope my team they won one. 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 I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We're right in the middle of March Madness. Yeah, things actually are kicking off now. They don't start soon. They are off the races now. We'll give you some updates throughout. For the HBCU programs that you're looking to keep up with, we'll give you that update. And those teams actually kick off men's and women's tomorrow. We do have some updates from the NAIA. One team is moving forward, one is not. So we have one team left, whether it's in the NCAA Division II or NAIA tournaments, respectively. And we'll tell you who that is if you hadn't heard. I'm sure our fans have, but we'll talk a little bit about moving into the field of Elite Eight teams going forward. And one of them happens to be an HBCU program. Welcome to episode 373 Inside the HBCU Sports Live radio show and podcast. The show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture. HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is out on assignment. We're going to have to go hunting for him again. I'm not sure what's taking place. Is he sneaking off to watch some of these basketball games? You know, he got a freaking flyer miles. It's no telling. We are filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KCOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Fame, multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. Yes, I'm back in town. Leaving out tomorrow, sneak up there to Dayton, get on back for the show on Thursday because I need to make sure that there's a presence here in the office. So we'll take care of that. Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency, LLC. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational and consulting and data analytics. Speaking about the tournaments, maybe we'll get into this after you give me your updates and how you're feeling as what some are referring to the snubs in terms of the NIT and certainly the CBI. With that being said, before we take a deeper dive in that, what kind of news do you want to share with us today, Charles? And how you doing?
Well, I'm doing well, Dr. Bill. Of course, we had a jam-packed weekend this past weekend with you being up at the MEAC tournament, of course, both of us being at the SWAC tournament, just getting settled back into a little spring break action. Just take a quick deep breath here before we go forward with the rest of some HBCU sporting diaspora, if you will. But you take a look at some news, HBCU All-Star Game rosters and awards revealed, and this is huge when we take a look at the HBCU All-Star Game, which will be played at Texas Southern at the HPE Arena April 2nd. But let's go over the rosters of the teams who will be represented in that game. We start with the Dick Barnett team, and that's comprised of the MEAC, SIAC, and independent HBCU All-Stars. Joe Bryant from Norfolk State, Chris Bankston from Norfolk State, Isaiah Burt from Morgan State, Brendan Medley Bacon from North Carolina Central University, Sam Sessoms from Compton State University, Nathaniel Pollard from University of Maryland Eastern Shore, Demetri Horton from North Carolina A&T, Marquise Goodwin from Hampton. You have Junior Clay from Tennessee State, Greg Boyd from Tuskegee, Kerry Richardson from Morehouse, and Elike Bowles from Savannah State. They represent Team Dick Barnett. We take a look at Team Willis Reed, which is comprised of the SWAC and CIAA HBCU All-Stars. That is comprised of Cameron Christian from Grambling, Breon Whitley from Southern, Jordan Carl Nicholas from Texas Southern, John Walker from Texas Southern, Sean Doss from University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, Dontrell McCourt from Alcorn State, Will Douglas from Prairie View, Terry Collins from Mississippi Valley State, Marcus Garrett from Bethune-Cookman, Robert Osborne from Virginia Union, Terrence Hunter Whitfield from Virginia State, and Corey Williams from Lincoln University. Of course, Team Willis Reed will be coached by Dante Jackson, who was the head men's basketball coach at Grambling, and Jay Butler, who is the men's basketball coach at Virginia Union University. So those represent the HBCU All-Star rosters.
Great updates when you talk about the All-Star games. It should be fun right here in our backyard, Texas Southern University on the campus there. I know Howard, a young lady, Erica, she always supporting our Bison, talked about the fact that the Howard wasn't on the roster. One thing I do want to make sure that people may consider, not to say they did have a graduate guard that could have been eligible to play on there, but they only take players that have expended all their eligibility in regards to participating in the game. So it'll be interesting to see what that looked like in terms of the All-Stars. I'm sure there are a couple of other folks that feel they should have been on the list in terms of maybe seniors or graduate players that exhausted their eligibility. But that's why it's All-Star. You always get those snubs. You always get that. And the question I like to ask is, who do you take off when you want to replace somebody in there? Because there's only a limited number of on the roster, 13 for the roster. So if you're going to add somebody, you got to take somebody off. And I think that's when it really gets good, when you start saying, all right, this is the person I take off. And we can get in a little bit of debate out of that. So I'm still waiting to see what that looks like. With that being said, there was also some major discussion in regards to once the polls were released. We're doing HBCU Nightly, the basketball edition. As everything was coming out, things went like most people thought in terms of basically automatics into the NCAA tournament. Texas Southern, as they won the automatic bid, have a losing record, so they play in the playing game. You have Howard, number 1 seed. They will face, I should say, a number 1 seed as a 16 seed. So you have some games that start out yesterday. We'll get in a little more deeper of those matchups to see what Charles thinks about what those matchups look like. But when it really got interesting is by the end of the night, halfway through the show, yeah, the NIT was revealed. You know, it pretty much comes on about an hour or so after they wrap up, have all the talk on the NCAA Division I men's and women's tournament. And so you get your NIT. We already pretty much knew WNIT, you had the automatic bid of Jackson State, Morgan State as well, because on the women's side, they take the first and second team to finish in the roster. On the men's side, they only take one team, even if there is co-champions, which made things really intriguing this year. Obviously, going into the tournament, we realized that Alcorn State, the Braves, had the number 1 seed. They beat Grambling by 3. There was only one contest, so tiebreaker rule, they get that. We didn't or may not have realized that that tiebreaker was also going to govern who would get the NIT bid if neither team actually, well, if Grambling or Alcorn didn't win the tournament, neither team won the tournament, as I was saying. Then Alcorn would get the NIT bid. They did get that, but that means 24-9. 15-3 finish. Co-champs, Grambling State, do not have a bid. NIT, then it doubled down and even got worse. CBI came out with theirs, and there was no Grambling, no HBCU for that matter, in the contest. You even had some coaches, particular Grambling, Norfolk State, North Carolina Central, that, for lack of better words, lobbied for the fact that they wanted to see about the teams getting in. When you talk about Central, they made it to the semifinals, lost to Norfolk State, game that went in overtime after they beat them the previous week to have a second-place finish in the conference. But again, as I remind you, NIT does not take only the first team automatic bid if that team does not win the tournament. Howard won the tournament, so they were not obliged to take any men's team from the MEAC for the NIT. Central finishes at 18-12, 10-4 in the conference. They're at home. Norfolk State finishes 22-11 in the championship game that goes down to literally the last seconds. They're at home. No NIT or CBI bid. And just to throw it out there, you even had Maryland Eastern Shore Hawks, 18-13, one of their best seasons in years. As they are lovely setting and showing that they're going to be in the basketball business. 9-5 in the conference, tied with Norfolk State for the regular season. They did not get a NIT, CVI did. All right, we understand the NCAA. One thing I noticed is doing the kind of analytics, when you look at the NIT, is all the teams that host and basically get at large bids come from the Power 5 conference. We may have 1, 2 that are quote unquote mid-majors, but the rest of them, the majority of them, are Power 5 institutions. The only mid-major or low major, whichever term you want to use, are those outside of the Power 5, outside of the red line, as they like to talk about, those programs that are spending a certain amount of money, outside of the brands that some people like to refer to. There was only 1 or 2 teams that got in the NIT that did not get the at-large bid, meaning they finished in the regular season as the champion, and then therefore they were given an at-large bid to the NIT. But none of them, except for maybe 1, got an at-large bid. So you see, even the NIT is reserved for the Power 5 program.
So I think we're going to have to go through a little bit of an education process in terms of what is the criteria, what is the NIT looking for, and I know you've broken this down, especially when we take a look at on the football side of things with regards to the FCS playoffs. But does the NIT do you have to bid to host games, or what exactly is the criteria going into those teams getting chosen for the NIT?
Previously, the NIT was an independent tournament. Actually, at one time, it went toe-to-toe with the NCAA, for those that may have forgot that. But they went toe-to-toe, if you would, with the NCAA. As the NCAA group became the favorite with the television programs, the major brands deciding to opt for the NCAA, getting bigger payouts over the years, the NIT just kind of wandered, if you would. And then finally, at one point, they basically sued the NCAA. Won that, but in that suit, part of the lawsuit that the NCAA decided to agree to is that they would pay out the settlement and essentially take over the NIT. So I would imagine that those boards that cover the NIT essentially are similar to what you see for the NCAA, which means the biggest thing you're looking at for quadrant 1 wins. So for me, it's not about necessarily the method. We understand the method. We've heard it till you're blue in the face. The question is about access. If this is an NIT tournament, it doesn't pay the conferences any. It's a way to reward. And you even see teams like North Carolina's Tar Heels that decline,
yeah.
That don't even decline the invite, to show you how little value they see in it. But still, other major brands of the Power 5, if you would, they decide to participate, and they do it in such a way because they want to at least generate some money to break even, if not make some money that they put back in their pool. But I'm saying you're making billions of dollars. And so at some point, you open it up in the terms of equity, if you would. And I know that's a learned term for a lot of folks out there in terms of this equity, diversity, that you have literally politicians that are creating laws to do away with it. But it doesn't mean that I can't put it out there in regards to the landscape of people to consider what is taking place here.
Does the NIT pay the conferences in the same way that the NCAA does? I know it's not close to the same amount, but
yeah, people don't even realize the women's basketball tournament doesn't even do a payout where you get a unit. That is only in the men's basketball, and of all sports, it's the only one that a conference, if you would, teams earn it, which goes back to the conference, and based on the number of units, meaning the number of wins that you win throughout the tournament, all the way to the Final Four, you add those units up, and then you have a multiplicative effect of where there's a set amount of money that goes to each conference, and that's in the millions of dollars. So over a 6-year period where it rotates the amount that you get. Obviously, the next year you start your new 6th year, 1 year falls off, and then if you're winning, you add those two together. So that's the payout that the conference gets. It distributes it back to the institutions in whatever formula they see fit, whatever formula the presidents and chancellors agree to and vote on that's in the bylaws in regards to how they distribute that money. You see different conferences do different things in regards to if a team actually goes into the tournament. You heard this maybe in the Big West, for example, when Gonzaga, they actually get a bigger percentage of that money because they've been able to be successful over the years. So they've negotiated through the conference about having that. So you see that in some of the conferences out. A lot of them, like the SEC, just divided equally to all the teams and just cut a check. When they do their big distribution deal, when you hear about the SEC distributing like $47 million, part of that money is the basketball money, part of that is the corporate partner money, part of that is all the postseason events that you see, the tournament, whether that's the basketball tournament for the SEC, all those sales go to the conference office and then they disperse it based on how the presidents and chancellors agreed upon. But to finalize your point, to make sure that everybody gets it, no, the NIT does not distribute funds to the school based on that. What you find out is the NCAA will cover travel costs, much like we see with the FCS playoffs. They will have a set amount with the number of band members you can bring, the number of players you can bring on your team, the number of coaches, the number of administrative officials. They have it all capped. Now, obviously, you can bring more because they tend to do charter flights. You can be more, but you're going to be charged and you have to pay for anything above what their set line is when you go in the playoffs. But great questions, but I didn't want to get it lost in the fact that major concerns there. So one of the questions you put on the table, with solution, should there be a rule if there is a co-champ that the co-champ automatically get the NIT, not just one, or you just simplify it like the women's side that is expanded where the number one and second team finisher gets the bid to the NIT tournament. Even if the number one team then wins the conference, you have a team in second place that will get it. The third option that you've heard a little bit about, are we ready to have an HBCU basketball tournament in some format after those teams that go to the NCAA or the automatic bid to the NIT? Do you do that? Could it be profitable? And what does that look like in regards to giving HBCUs an opportunity to continue the season?
Oh, wow.
Particularly when they did really well, like Grambling or North Carolina Central, Norfolk State, Maryland Eastern Shore. You literally have two teams that have 20-plus wins that are at home when there are 3 tournaments out there to participate in, and they don't get an invite to any of them.
That's very intriguing. That's an intriguing possibility there. We have to dive into that because you have some very worthy teams that were left out. And the question for me is the fan interest part of it in terms of the HBCU basketball tournament. We saw how that fan interest galvanized with the Celebration Bowl. It might have taken a season or two, but it got there. With the same synergy happen with regards to an HBCU basketball tournament? So that's an intriguing prospect, Doc.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a fair question because other than the CIAA, as well as the MEAC tournaments doing pretty well in terms of attendance, but not so well for the SIAC or the SWAC. So does that tell you the interest is not there? And do you do it based on the interest? Because now you can get television, whether it's streaming or over the air, are those opportunities that you do it for your students so they have that opportunity. Obviously, we hadn't talked about another team that had a winning season that would be eligible for this. Tennessee State on the men's side had a great season. And then obviously on the women's side, when you start talking about some of these teams that had great seasons, you had North Carolina A&T. They're sitting at home as well, not getting a bid to the WNIT or the WCBI in terms of what that looks like. So those are some teams that are out there that had great seasons that did not get an invite. Even Howard Bison that went to the championship game nearly pulled it off. They finished with a winning record of 16-14. They did not get a bid. So just giving you some examples that this is both on the men's and women's side where it takes place at time in terms of teams having great season. Alabama State Lady Hornets finished at 16-15, did not get an invite as well. So we'll take a break. Gave you some things to think about. Want to see what the talking points are out there, what people think about in the lab as we discuss this. With that being said, We'll be right back on the other side as we come back and reveal the major division women's poll rankings. Should be some changes as some tough losses in the tournament. You've seen it all week as you had major upset buzzer beaters right here in the MEAC and SWAC. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break. Give you some updates on the NIL as well. We'll share that to the end of the show. We do have one team that is still lacing them up. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
Now, you can't live in Texas and not have a good red meat blend. Texas Cowboy Dust is designed for steak and other red meats. It's out to be my most popular spice blend, made with onions, peppers, ground mushrooms, pink salt, and other spices. Texas Cowboy Dust also goes great with chicken, pork, vegetables, and adds a restaurant quality sheen to gravies and sauces.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Vanilla smoked sea salt seasoning is for seafood. The tarragon and fennel bring out the natural sweetness in seafood. I also use it in rice dishes, on yams, asparagus, blueberry pancakes, and believe it or not, chocolate chip cookies. Vanilla smoked sea salt adds a salty and savory component to sweet dishes that create a symphony for the tongue.
When you're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics, there's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Mills inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Let's get into the poll rankings. Shivery ideas. So we're gonna start with the women and see what Charles thinks. Some movement this week. We have a new number one, and we have a new team that jumps in the top 5. But as we start, that means somebody fell out. Who fell out this week? Prairie View A&M Panthers. 15, 15, 12, and 6 had a really good, solid season. I'm sure they were really disappointed in terms of how they finished in the tournament. Not that you lost, but they really got pounded. But we didn't foresee that the team that pounded it had plans to close out the tournament in style. That was receiving votes to get in those teams that are just on the outside looking in. Alabama State Hornets, 16 and 15, 12 and 6, also had a tough tournament after a really solid year, 39 points. Morgan State Bears, 17 and 10, 10 and 4, 32. Remember, their season continues as they got invited to the WNIT, so we'll keep an eye on them. See how they move forward as their game kicks off tomorrow. Prairie View A&M Panthers close out the season at 15 and 15, 12 and 6, receiving votes at 22 points. Alabama A&M Bulldogs, 14 and 15, 12 and 6 with 18 points. Shut it down as well, meaning we get into top 5. Who are the top 5 programs? Howard Bison made a great run in the MEAC and pushed their record to a winning record, 16 and 14, 10 and 4 in the conference play, 49 points, but they remain in the 5th spot. Jumping into the top 5 is number 4, Southern Jaguars. Really went on a run in the tournament, got it done, and pulled off probably the biggest stunner of this side of HBCUs. If not overall, particularly on the women's side, Southern Jaguars 18 and 14, 12 and 6. They take down the queens of the basketball court that were rolling 58 points, not ranked to jump in the top 5 as Jackson State Tigers lose on a 3-point buzzer beater, essentially a couple of 4 seconds on the top, but all for it to be, it was basically done. Bringing us to number 3. North Carolina A&T State Aggies, 18 and 12, 12 and 6. That is 62 points. They dropped down a spot from number 2. They close out in the opening round of the Colonial Conference. Bringing us to number 2, Jackson State Tigers. They finished 21 and 9, 17 and 1 with 1 first place vote. They still hold on to it, 73 points. They fall for the number 1 spot, which means we got a new number 1. Norfolk State Spartans, they do the double daily as they get it done, winning the MEAC regular season and then getting it done in the tournament. A classic game against Howard as they hold on to get it done 26-6. That's second championship 2 in the last 3 years as they are 11 and 3. 7 first place votes, 79 points. they rise from the third spot last week as they get it done. New number one, Norfolk State Spartans moved to the top after the conference tournament play has ended in week number 10. We'll see what this means as we get a little further into it, see what they do in the tournament in the draw. We'll get a chance to see how long they make it in the tournament. And they pulled the doozy. They pulled the number one South Carolina State. And on the women's side, they don't have the neutral sites. They play on the home court. And this is the South Carolina team that many people are saying is one of the best women's team, if not the best ever. And so it will be tough to get it done. But Norfolk State, that's why you lace them up and put it down. As this is the second straight year that South Carolina has gone unanimous number one throughout the entire season.
Wire to
trying to
wire.
go back to back. Can Norfolk State stop them before they get started? We shall see. Charles, what are your thoughts in terms of the top 5 programs in week number 10?
No problem whatsoever. I wanted to see how far the Southern Lady Jaguars would vault into that top 5 because I think if you take a look at the totality of both men's and women's within the tournament, theirs was absolutely the shocker with the last-second buzzer beater to knock off Jackson State in the SWAC semifinals. And so the curiosity part for me was to see where Southern would land in that top 5, well deserving to get in the top 5. Tremendous SWAC tournament run. Can't take anything away from Norfolk State Spartans. I mean, they got it done, and they were able to vault up to that number 1 spot, taking down a tough Howard Bison team. Exciting tournaments, both on the MEAC and SWAC tournament side, Dr. Cavil, I have to say that. But I take my hat off to the Southern Lady Jaguars. They got it done. They put it together at the right time, and I haven't seen a team shoot the 3 ball like that in a long time. And they were 55% in that game against Jackson State, and they were able to carry that over to the championship game where they hit some pretty timely 3s. So you take your hats off to Coach Carlos Funches for them getting it done.
The last 3 buckets were 3, to be exact.
Last 3, yeah.
And think about this. They literally needed them all to win the game, just to let you know that credit to Southern about just playing through and getting done. But it also lets you know the talent of Jackson State. And so that's dialogue here. I did want to get into this while we got a little time here before we hit our next break. A.D. Drew asked the question, how is a postseason team outside of top 5? In this case, the postseason team he'd be talking about would be out of the MEAC. Morgan State Bears 17-10 and 10-4. 32 points are outside of the top 5. They're in the WNIT. They get that bid as the automatic, finishing second in the regular season to their credit. So just like I said earlier, when you talk about the All-Star, who do you take out? Which team do you take out of the top 5 and replace them with? And before I get an answer to that, Charles, what are your thoughts? Do you believe Morgan State should be in the top 5? It sounds like you're good with the top 5. But it was a question out there, so I think we'll ponder it.
Who's the number 5 team? Howard? Who's the number 5 team again?
Howard is number 5. They made it to the championship team. They finished the regular season in the 3rd position. Finished at 16-4, 10-4, tied with Morgan State, who finished 10-4 in the conference race, but did have a better overall record at 17-10.
If we're going to base things on, and you mentioned this, it is week to week. You take a look at who was in the championship games. I think both in the SWAC and the MEAC. I guess if you're going to attempt to butt somebody out, you're gonna swap Morgan State with North Carolina A&T or Jackson State. I can't get over that hurdle.
I think you can make an argument for maybe North Carolina A&T because they really hit the buttons on the end of the season, kind of failed, but they had such a strong overall season. So I don't know. They did fall a spot. Maybe things will change up next week and people will feel what A.G. Drew is cooking out there as he talks about the lab and what his thoughts are. Great comment, great question. But I can one conference loss in the regular season. You get to the championship and you lose on the buzzer, you can't drop them out. I think you might be able to market. I will say this: you might be able to make an argument for North Carolina A&T State Aggies, but that's about it. I can't drop Howard. They tied in the regular season. Howard made it to the championship. Southern won the championship. Norfolk. So, even according to that they made postseason. So you can't drop on that. So
we're going to vault Morgan State up to
Alabama State actually have more points over Morgan State. So you skipping them up a bit.
Yeah. That's a tough one. Nah, I don't know if I can go. I don't know if I can jump that hurdle, AD.
So Eddie Drew did chime back in, and he is breaking the argument that I said out there that A&T would be the team he dropped out. So I can see that. Do you bump up Southern to 3, Howard to 4, and Morgan State to 5? He's saying the same thing. First round loss in the Colonial and a terrible last 3 weeks. I do agree. They had a bad last week. They were so high in the polls, it didn't allow them to fall that far. And then they did get a win in there that kind of pushed them back up with some other teams. Remember, the MEAC was jostling over that last week, as you pointed out, Charles, week to week, which probably helped A&T in the fact that, remember, Norfolk State was sliding as they went into the tournament. Obviously, they were able to turn it on and get it done. But there were a lot of things working late in the season for the MEAC. So fascinating, great conversation, great dialogue. Want to give AD credit for putting that out there. I appreciate bringing that to our attention. With that, let's go into our second break. We'll be right back on the other side. See if some of the other lab listeners have some thoughts in terms of the top 5 on the women's side before we look at the men. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
The Cavil Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cavil.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and parenting education coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentjax.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Test the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna love, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Charles, if you would, I want to take a little detour as we come back and we'll get into the major division top 5. Before we did that, I certainly wanted to give some love at the NAI level where we have a team that has continued the season. We actually had one that played yesterday, Tougaloo, and Langston that played today. Unfortunately for Langston, their season is over as they lose 74-60. Tough game where they just weren't shooting very well from the field. 18 field goals compared to Georgetown, Kentucky, which those that may not realize, they have really won several championships and hold it down. For those that like to make the comparison, they would be the Duke, if you would, in terms of number of championships they've been able to win at the NIA level in words to the program, or similar to what Texas Southern has done in the tournament, regular season, or even Norfolk State over the last couple of years in regards to how they dominated. They've done it at the tournament. 74-60. Georgetown had hit 27 field goals. So you see the disparity in that. And then the second place you looked at is always tough. If you can't get the shots up, that means you really need to close them out on the boards. They could not get it done on the boards.
Rebounding.
They were down in the total boards, rebounding there 42-31, so tough matchup there. Before we go to Tougaloo, they got it done. Let me know your thoughts on Langston as they are knocked out of the NIA tournament as they make it to Kansas City as one of the final 16 teams. They do not make it to the 8 as they get knocked out today, 74-60, as things just didn't quite go their way.
Well, you take your hats off, number one, to Langston for getting to the round of 16, just going up against a little more superior team, especially that stat that you pulled out, the rebounding stat. And when we talked with Coach Eric Struthers, he mentioned that he thought his team could make a deep run because not only can they score, but they rebound the ball very well. So that's what makes, I think, Tougaloo intriguing going forward, in that they can take on some of these top NAIA teams around the country, and they have the firepower that can go with them. But take your hats off to Langston for getting as far as they did. But like I said, from here forward, it's about getting those rebounds, and getting those second chance opportunities to kind of reset your offense and try to get something up on the rim.
Yeah, Langston drops to 29-3 with the loss out of the season. Couldn't quite get to that 30-win mark, but they were right there. First-year coach that really turned around the season. You can only imagine that it's going to get better from here. But on the other side, you had Tougaloo, which I was watching closely. I wanted to see them match up in like that Final Four, final game in terms of a champion for the NAIA that happened to be with HBCUs facing each other. But Tougaloo, they're still alive. They have jumped up to 31-1. They beat the number one seeded program in that part of the bracket in terms of St. Thomas, which is a big win. So credit to Tougaloo. As you talked about Coach Smothers, we brought him on the show, doing some great things in regards to how he talked about how talented that team was. They hadn't got love earlier in terms of their position, but I'm sure they're starting to get some recognition now as folks are talking about watch out for the Tougaloo Bulldogs. Again, they're at 31-1, 14-0 as they went through the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference unscathed. And they are now at the final 8 teams in Kansas City as it just gets bigger and better from here. What are your thoughts on Tougaloo Bulldogs as they get it done moving into further down in the conference race?
A really funny thought at the SWAC tournament. I talked with a couple of Jackson State alumni, and they were, lament the fact that, Tougaloo had a couple of guys that they thought Jackson State could really use. But Cameron Copeland, Coach Struthers mentioned him when he came on. Huge game against St. Thomas. He had 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. But he's a legit scorer who can take it, who can move off screens, who can put it on the floor, who can get in the lane, can create contact and get to the foul line. He's a terrific combo guard in talking with Coach Struthers about him. So, I think Tougaloo has the ingredients that can keep moving forward going in this tournament. But I'm looking forward to see what they can do. It is fun watching Coach Struthers get the flowers that he so rightfully deserves with this team making a deep run in the NAIA playoffs. Coach Struthers, he's toiled for so long within the SWAC, within HBCUs. For him to take a team this far really speaks to his coaching prowess. And I tell you what, I couldn't be more proud of him.
Well, let me ask you this. As the question goes, and they won that game against St. Thomas, 74-68. They were right there with them the whole game, but they were trailing. But that fourth quarter, they really got it going in terms of that second half, I should say, the last 10 minutes. When you think about breaking it up into quarters or 4-minute segments, they dominated the game and were able to get big stops, big buckets. So with that being said, it just gets tougher from here. How far do you see this team going in the NAIA tournament?
They have 3 guys that can score. They have Cameron Copeland. I mentioned him. He went for 20 points in this past game, but they have a couple other guys that I want to make mention of. I can pull them up real quick, but Darius Henner and Antonio Patterson, both of those guys, they can get buckets. So a team that can rebound as well as Tougaloo does, and that guard play. They have some guys that can really get in the lane and create contact and get to the foul line, and they have those little mini bursts I talked with you at the SWAC tournament about the way I think Jackson State's women go on little bursts, but we saw Tougaloo went on, I believe, like an 11-5 burst in that game, and they were able to withhold it down the stretch. But this is a team that has the ability to put 6-0, 8-0 runs together and take control of games. So those are things that you just kind of keep an eye on with regards to Tougaloo moving forward.
I like the great way that you have broken that down in terms of as they have a chance to make a move and continue to move forward. With that, we'll get back with you on the other side. So stick with us. We'll come back with the major division, top 10 programs. And then at the last segment, we'll give you some updates and our thoughts in terms of these matchups going at the major division level for the last segment. But stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food? Like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
Oh, we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Press the analytic data with your hip-hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Mill inside the HBCU Sports Lab. As I was talking about going in the tournament, if Langston would have got it done, you would have had that all HBCU matchup in the top 8. So obviously, Tougaloo, you can deduce that Tougaloo will face Georgetown, Kentucky in that next round. So it'll be fascinating. Can they get a little payback for Langston, or will it be the second consecutive HBCU that Georgetown of Kentucky takes down in the NIA tournament? This is the round of 8. It just gets that much tougher. Fascinating to see what that looks like. With that being said, before we get into the major division for the men, shout out to the lab listeners, Silas Edward McMorris. Theron Waters is in the building saying hi, guys. Jazzy Faith is making sure that she has a presence in the building as well. Ricky Burton. Karen Griffin is showing us love. Carol Keelam is in the house. G. Boom Holly is always representing. Chad Cooper. Varick Williams has talked about. Karen Griffin says the people have spoken. It's time to move out of Birmingham. Oh, wow. Good point.
Oh, wow.
One thing I do want to say about this, that I'm not one to say that Birmingham is the place to be. I have business there and I work, so I go in there. So I'm not here to belittle or big up. But I do want it very important for our fans to be educated about the process. Conferences do not seek out cities, because two things will do if you do that. Any revenue that you're making or that you think you will make from increasing attendance, if you go to a city that is not bidding for you, your hotel prices are going to go up. So that's going to affect your fans as well as affect the teams that are staying there in the hotel. Also, you're going to pay for now the operation of the SWAC. You got to pay for them. And so that cost is increasing. So, you really want to make sure as this process goes that you put out a bid request, which means whatever city that you all are pushing for to support the SWAC, I'm all in game for it. But make sure you do your politicking with your city council people, your mayor, and as well as your sports authority to make sure that they put a bid in. Let me say it again. Make sure y'all are educated about this process. You want the city that you are seeking to host the SWAC championship game to put in a bid. We're not going to go over there and just place the tournament there, because now if you don't have that space, who's to say that wherever you're seeking to go that they're not bidding for another conference?
So what you're saying is we can't just randomly call out cities.
Yeah, so some of these cities are hosting basketball tournaments at the same time that I see y'all coming out. Y'all not even paying attention to the landscape to at least make a plausible argument in regards to where you want to go. So I'm not saying the cities that you're talking about wouldn't be great cities, but it has to make sense beyond where it is close for you to drive and have a good time, because hopefully a lot of time your butt is in the stand supporting the game. Because I will tell you now, it doesn't matter much to me because I'm so tired after covering everything all day. Like that. But at some point, you got to be supporting the team. If you're just in the city for numbers to make sure you can go get a good cigar smoke, get some drinks, and have some great food and talk to your friends, you're still not doing any good for the tournament. Yeah, it's great because you get to mingle, and trust me, I like that as well as we talk about it. But I just want our fans to be educated about the process to make sure when they make these requests that they put it out there in such a way that it can be substantive. So I just wanted to break that down. Let me get in there a little bit off this soapbox. Hopefully everybody understands what I'm talking about, the importance of making sure you have all the information. So I did want to share that. Let's get in the top 5 in the major division for the men and tell you what it looks like this week. We do have a team dropping out. We talked a little bit about this team earlier, team that should be in postseason with a winning record, but they did not get an invite. Tennessee State Tigers, 18-14, play some good basketball, particularly near the end of the season. You talk about one of the hottest teams, HBCU sports right now. If you're breaking it down into parts of the season, you would have to go with Tennessee State Tigers as they started out really hot in the first part of the season, got into conference play, slowed down some, and then got back into it. Now, what about those teams that are on the outside? Texas Southern, yeah, they won the championship, but they had such a log as they started the conference play, going on for 5. Even though they run the table, yes, they get in receiving votes, but not enough to get in the top 5 and make a run in the tournament. Maybe. Texas Southern Tigers are 14-27 and 11, 56 points. Tennessee State Tigers are behind them at 18-14 and 10-8. And then Maryland Eastern Shore Hawks that we also talked about ending the season with the winning record, one of the best years they've had in some time at 18-13, 9-5 with 34 points. So let's get in the top 5. Let's see who jumps in the top 5 versus that team that fell out, which was Tennessee State. Bringing us to number 5. We're going into North Carolina Central Eagles. We told you how hot another team that was really hot at the end of the season was none other than North Carolina Central in terms of the rankings. And at 18-12, 10-4, they fall one spot as they previously ranked 4 with 65 points, bringing us to number 4. Alcorn State Braves get in at 18-13. At 15-3, 78. They fall spots as they go in to number 2 as they lose first round. Everybody came into the tournament that was paying attention and did not necessarily like that 1-8 matchup. Alcorn has had trouble with Texas Southern in the last couple of years of the tournament. And plus, people had knew that Texas Southern was not only a team that can play well in the tournament, but they basically have everybody else. And they were closing out the season relatively strong, more importantly, healthy. And we see what they did in terms of the buzzsaw to get it done. They knocked off, think about this, the co-champs, a 1 and 2 seed as well as a 4 seed. So they didn't do this herky-jerk. They earned it in terms of what they did in the tournament. Bringing us to number 3, Norfolk State Spartans, 22-11, 11-3, 88 points. They were not ranked. They went on a run in the tournament. And boy, you talking about something that they will be thinking about the lifetime. The
Wow.
inbound pass at the end of the game was enough to undo the fact that it looked like they were going dancing, much like Texas Southern, for the third time in a row. It was not to be. Howard Bison had the magical season, regular season, and the tournament as they do the double-double. We'll see where they land at number 2. No. At number 2, it is Grambling State Tigers sitting at 24-8, 15-3. They still earned 3 first-place votes, 101 points. First place, they couldn't get again, Texas Southern. It seems like they were dragging a little bit in that game in the first half, but they kicked it up and made a valiant effort in a run in the second half, but Texas Southern had just too much or had just enough to cut down the nets as they go dancing for the third time, which now means we have a number 1 team, a new number 1 team, and the number 1 team is out of the MEAC, the Howard Bison that go back to the tournament first time in 30 plus years, 21-12 on the season. So they get to the 21 win plateau of 11-3, 8 first place votes, 107 points. They move up 2 spots. And in week number 10, Howard Bison moved to the top after conference tournament play in week number 10. Will they be able to hold on for the regular season? We'll see as they take on the number 1 seed in the tournament, as they are one of the few teams left, as with Alcorn, they'll play in the Wednesday, as well as Texas Southern that plays Wednesday as well. Charles, what are your thoughts on the top 5?
Tennessee State, how many wins did they have on the season?
18. They went 18-14, 10-8, dropped out of the poll. They are the second team receiving votes behind Texas Southern. So essentially, if you would, they would be number 7 team in the total points, as they are outside of the top 5 and could not bump in. North Carolina Central, Norfolk State with those 22 wins was the team that overtook them. As they lost in the first round of the tournament a couple of weeks ago, really ugly. It really dropped them out in terms of the top 5 finish at this time in week 10.
Well, yeah, that was the thing that I was looking at with this week's poll was by virtue of Alcorn losing to the number 8 seed, how far would they slide? And would a team that is receiving votes, would they have enough juice to get into the top 5? But when I saw North Carolina Central there at 5, the intriguing part for me was the number 4 team, and that's why I was curious about Tennessee State with them being on the uptick, if you will, toward the end part of the season, if they were able to usurp Alcorn or if Alcorn were able to slide out of that top 5.
I think if they would have won a game, certainly 2 in the OVC, I think you could have made a better case for Tennessee State, which a couple of things. Man, they would have made a nice run in the tournament, obviously, but that means they would have got to 20 wins as well, which is always a nice demarcation in terms of the success of the season. So the fact that they had that loss at the end of the season would have basically put them tied for second against a team that just moved up to Division I, hurt them. And then you go in the tournament and the opening round, you really lay a dud. It wasn't even close. So I think when you talk about those success losses, even though they closed really strong before those last 2 losses, I think that did them in regards to Alcorn getting a piece of the regular season champion.
Sure.
And obviously we know about the matchup and went in that other than the seedings, I'm not sure how much of that you call it an upset, just one of those demons that sometimes takes place in any tournament around the country.
Sure thing. Sure thing.
With that, let's take our last break. We'll come back on the other side. We'll talk about some of these big matchups, get Charles' final thought in terms of what may take place. With the first 4, Texas Southern takes on Arley Dickerson. We'll see what that looks like. Alcorn State is against North Texas in the NIT. So we'll give you a little bit of what our thoughts are on that. Stick with us. We'll be right back on the other side to close out the show.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
T. Madden and Associates is a sophisticated and experienced law firm located in your neighborhood. We're turning injury to cash.
T. Madden and Associates obtained almost $2 million for my injury. They turned my injury to cash.
Now, we can't guarantee how much your injury is worth, but we've recovered millions for our clients.
Call T. Madden and Associates at 833-PAID-123. That's 833-PAID-123.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Let's get into some of these matchups. Let's get into the first one. The first 4 which features 2 16 seeds. You have Fairleigh Dickinson coming in at 19-5 versus Texas Southern that comes in at 14-20 in terms of their matchup after winning the tournament. One thing that I thought was interesting when I started looking at some of the players, but particularly the standings for Fairleigh Dickinson, the Knights, is they actually finished second in the conference. Merrimack, and even though you talk about them losing the tournament final to Merrimack that was not eligible to go into the NCAA tournament, so they get the bid even though they lost that game. So this is a team that has lost the last 2 games, played really the champion pretty well, so they certainly deserve to be there. But that just opens up some discussion that if Texas Southern plays what we've seen them play in the tournament, and they will be comfortable about going into this building, filling the field. They were there literally just last year in regards to what this looks like. So I think that is a favor for them going into this matchup, and the confidence about being used to getting on the plane and all the things that go into it. It's amazing what people may not realize. You finish off this stretch where you play 7 games in 10 days. You get home, and then Sunday you do your watch party, and then you're planning to literally take off on Monday on the jet that takes you in to Dayton. They do a great job of welcoming the teams there in regards to giving them a first-class invite. But the turnaround is so fast. It's interesting to see which team takes that the best. So let's start here with Texas Southern and Dickinson. What are your thoughts in terms of this matchup, which is on True TV, 5:40 tomorrow for those that want to check it out?
You take a look at this game, and Texas Southern, they get, again, you talked about their experience playing in the NCAA tournament. I think that bodes well for them. I think that's going to help them out tremendously. PJ Henry, you talk about a money clutch player for Texas Southern in terms of their guard play. Put the ball in his hands and let's see what can happen. But I think the big thing for Texas Southern is rebounding. Fairleigh Dickinson only one player who is 6'7". So can Jordan Carter-Nichols, can he kind of stay out of foul trouble? Can he get on the boards? Can he create some second chance opportunities for Texas Southern? If that's the case, I like Texas Southern's chances going forward.
Well, now you see Kansas. This is the Kansas team that won everything against North Carolina coming back in the second half.
Yeah.
One of the top seeds out there, won the regular season in the Big 12. For those that didn't realize it, they actually played for the tournament championship, lost to Big Texas in the Big 12 championship. But, oh yeah, Self had to be hospitalized, so didn't coach. Don't want to take anything away from the Texas coach as the end or the players they got it done, but just wanted to lay it out so people understand the challenge of this matchup. Howard, 16 seed, 22-12 versus Kansas, that is 27-7. This is a 1:00 game on Thursday on TBS. West Region, first round in terms of this matchup. What are your thoughts in terms of Kansas Howard? Obviously, I think they got to shoot well,
and give
easy buckets where the thing gets out of control very early.
Yeah, I mean, you take a look when you start talking about those Power Five teams. They have all that height, they can rebound. But I will say this: puncher's chance for Howard. If they start knocking down the three ball, they are one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the MEAC. And if they get hot, it could make things very interesting for Kansas because we've seen, I think, in the past few years now that number one seed, they fight and they struggle to get through that 16 seed. If I'm not mistaken, there have been now we do have some 16 or one upsets now. So
one.
Well, yeah, we got one. So I mean, it can happen. Anything can happen. But what should be fun is Howard putting up the three ball. If they start knocking a few down, you never know. Kansas might start pressing.
As you said, you can no longer say that. They used to be the phrase, a 16 has never been a one. Well, we just seen it happen a couple of years ago. Obviously, as a Virginia team that wasn't as athletic and certainly didn't shoot as well, they like to really get you on the defensive side. So that works to your advantage if you're a team that shoots well. While we're saying that Howard to even have a chance, they got to shoot well. Let's turn the page.
Was St. Peter's a 15 or 16 last year?
16.
Okay.
Yeah. When they beat, St. Peter's was a 15 seed when they beat upset.
Okay.
That's it was the UMBC, the University of Maryland.
That's right.
More County. They got it done in that matchup a couple of years ago. In terms of Wednesday, we have a NIT first round matchup at 7:00. It's on ESPN Plus for those that have the streaming. You can check that out as Alcorn State takes on North Texas. The Braves come in at 18-13. And the Eagles of North Texas come in at 26-7. They had finished the season pretty strong in what is the Conference USA. They actually finished second at 16-4 in the conference race. They get the game and they host that first round. To give you some updates, obviously we talked about on the ladies' side, Morgan State going in their matchup. What are your thoughts in terms of the NIT and WNIT matchups?
As far as the NIT matchups, I think for Alcorn, the key for them is they can't. I don't know. We saw them against Texas. They just had the extreme cold spell that kind of threw things into. To me, it looked like they started pressing, if you will, being the number one seed, and they felt the weight of that Texas Southern, wave or whatever hit them. But to me, they got to shoot the ball well, rebound the ball well. I think on the women's side of the ball.
And just so you know, that women's side is Morgan State 17-11, at Wake Forest 16-16. That is on the ACC network, and that is 5:00 on Thursday.
It's going to be tough on the women's side of the ball. What at least I've seen with the women is the bigs or the skill position players down on the low post. If they are able to get easy buckets and get people in the foul trouble, then it becomes difficult on the guard play. On the women's side of the ball. I will say I think Jackson State is an interesting matchup versus Memphis because they have two very capable bigs. But we saw in that Southern game, they just missed too many bunnies. And we just don't normally see that with regards to Jackson State. They normally are able to knock down those little easy buckets down low. And had a couple of players that went 1-4 in that game. So it'll be interesting to see at least if Jackson State can get those easy opportunities and get some easy buckets. And then I think they can pull the upset against Memphis.
So also on ESPN, that's ESPNU at 8:00. So you have your 5:40 on True TV. You have your 7:00, and then your 8:00 on ESPNU is the first four on the women's side. That's new to the tournament, first year of the first four. Southern takes on Sacred Heart. Both teams are 16-16. So obviously, in terms of matchups, this is one that you believe that Southern has a chance of winning. 18-14 versus Sacred Heart that came in 18-13 in terms of their matchup. To give you something there, that is a Thursday game. It'll be interesting to see what they do there. Obviously, Sacred Heart won the tournament, Northeast Conference. So you have both SWAC schools taking up against Northeast Conference on the men and women's side in the open round. Sacred Heart finished number 2 behind Fairleigh Dickinson on the women's side, 18-13 overall in terms of their record. So what are your thoughts in terms of this matchup between Southern and Sacred Heart on the first four of the NCAA?
Well, if I'm Southern, I can continue to let it fly from 3-point land. I also like Genovia Johnson, tremendously athletic player. Was able to get in the lane quite a few times, getting to the championship game, and really was able to pace that Southern offense. But I tell you what, Southern from behind the arc, they're hitting it at the right time in the season. So hopefully they can continue to stay hot in the tournament.
We talked about this, so I won't ask you to relive it, but I do want it on the record that everybody knows Norfolk State 26-6 takes on the number one seed South Carolina. That's 32-0. That is on ESPN, a Friday matchup at 1 o'clock in Greenville for the first round regional there. That'll do it for us as we get to it. Any last thoughts you have, Charles?
Tremendous MEAC tournament, tremendous SWAC tournament. Enjoyed it. I thought both conferences did a great job of putting on hosting a great tournament and a first-class experience for the media.
Great stuff. I wanted to do that. I'm glad that you brought that up because I wanted to close by giving kudos to Ben Thompson that provided all the things necessary for me to be able to do the show at the tournament, encouraged me to come down there. Wonderful. Shout out to the commissioner in terms of what she is getting done there. Tremendous in terms of what that matchup looks like in so many different ways. I also want to talk about Ken Rashad, give him a shout out for all the coverage he did for HBCU sports. Great coverage in terms of getting all those interviews in. A lot of work there, as well as Tolly Cart in terms of calling the game. So great work going on there. So I wanted to kind of
Santoria Black as well.
Close it up. Thank you. Good one. Santeria Black. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Again, we want to thank you for listening, Dr. Lewis. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Mike Washington and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday. We'll be back to give you some updates there, major update poll rankings to let you know what's going on there, and to give you the updates and discuss what took place on some of those games on Wednesday and what to expect on Thursday. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Dream big, continue to move forward. We will talk soon. Charles?
Horace.
Roy?
Lecture.
Dismiss.